Let's get the show underway. Over the past 45 years, he has starred on stage, screen, and television.
It's one of the most beloved films ever made, The Sound of Music. But behind all the songs, smiles, and sweeping mountain views, there was one scene that went so wrong, it had to be completely scrapped from the final cut. What happened on that set left even Julie Andrews and Christopher Plummer in disbelief. And for decades, no one outside the crew knew the truth. Join us as we uncover the chaos, the cover-ups, and the unbelievable story behind the Sound of Music scene that had to be removed from the movie forever. The German origins. The story of The Sound of Music didn't start in Hollywood at all. It began quietly in post-war Germany, almost a decade before Julie Andrews ever sang Do Re Mi. In 1956, a German filmmaker named Wolfgang Liebeneiner released Die Trapp Family, a modest movie based on Maria von Trapp's memoir, The Story of the Trapp Family Singers. It was shot on a small budget, using mostly local talent, and carried a tone that felt deeply European, gentle, sentimental, and family-centered. No one expected much from it. Yet, when the film hit theaters, something unexpected happened. People loved it. In a country still recovering from the devastation of World War II, Die Trapp Family gave German audiences something they hadn't seen in years. A story about courage, kindness, and hope. It followed the von Trapp family as they turned away from fear and dictatorship to embrace music, faith, and love. The message was simple but powerful. Even in dark times, goodness could survive. For many viewers, it was healing. Germany in the mid-1950s was rebuilding itself, both physically and emotionally, and people were hungry for stories that showed humanity at its best. The success was overwhelming. The film became the biggest box office hit in West Germany at the time. Its popularity spread quickly across Europe, where audiences connected with its heartwarming themes. It was even shown in South America, where the Von Trapps' mix of family harmony and moral strength touched people far beyond their language or culture. The following year, a sequel, Die Trapp Family in America, continued their story and repeated the success. These two quiet little movies had done something no one expected. They had turned the story of one Austrian family into a cultural symbol of hope after war. But when the films reached the United States, the reaction could not have been more different. Hollywood didn't get it. To American studio executives, the German films looked dated and overly sentimental. The acting felt stiff, the production looked cheap, and the whole thing seemed, in their words, too foreign. It was the age of big Technicolor spectacles and glamorous stars, and this humble European family singing folk songs didn't fit that mold. U.S. studios saw no commercial potential in a story about a group of Austrians escaping the Nazis through music. Then came Vincent J. Donahue, a Broadway and television director who had just won a Tony Award and was scouting for new material for Paramount. He sat down to watch the German films, expecting to confirm everyone's doubts. And at first, he did. He thought they were awkward and clumsy. But as he watched, something clicked. Beneath the dated production and low budget, he recognized something genuine. A story full of heart, humor, and emotional truth. Donahue had a bold thought. This shouldn't be a Hollywood movie at all. It should be a Broadway musical. The Von Trapps' story had all the ingredients: music, emotion, faith, and a strong heroine. But it needed to be told through song and performance, not through a camera lens. And he knew exactly who could bring it to life. Mary Martin, the biggest Broadway star of her time. Martin's charm and voice could make the story shine in a way film never could. That single insight changed everything. With one idea, Donahue had taken a quiet European drama and set it on the path toward one of the most beloved musicals in history. And the wild part? None of it would have happened if Maria von Trapp hadn't made one very risky decision years earlier. The $9,000 deal. When Maria von Trapp first dealt with filmmakers, she was not thinking like a business person. She was a mother and a musician trying to support her family. In the early 1950s, German producers asked to buy the film rights to her memoir, The Story of the Trapp Family Singers. She said yes for a one-time payment of $9,000. There were no royalties, no profit share, and no control after the fact. It was a simple deal done quickly. At the time, it felt like welcome income. Looking back, it was a small sum for a life story that would become the backbone of one of the world's most famous musicals and films. What did $9,000 really mean? In 1950s, money, that is roughly $104,000 today. It is a meaningful amount for a family, but tiny compared to what came next. A hit Broadway show, a record-breaking film, and decades of ticket sales, broadcasts, and re-releases. Maria did not see any of that downstream money. The rights were gone. The value of her story grew, while her original payment stayed the same. It is one of those deals that looks reasonable in the moment, and shocking in hindsight. Even so, Maria held to a clear moral line. When Hollywood later came calling, some executives wanted to buy only the title of her book and then create a film merely inspired by the story. That would have let them change facts, soften edges, or invent events. Maria said no. If her family's story was going to be told, it had to be told truthfully and in full. She wanted the escape from Austria, the faith, the music, the discipline, and the hard choices to stay intact. She was willing to work with producers, but she would not let the story be twisted into something she did not recognize. While all this interest grew, Maria herself was far away from show business. She was in the jungles of Papua New Guinea, doing missionary work with Father Franz Wagner, the von Trapp family's longtime musical director. They moved from post to post, teaching, serving, and living simply. Mail was slow and piled up. Letters from American producers, many from Mary Martin and her husband Richard Halliday, sat unopened. Maria later admitted she often tore them up unread. She was not chasing a stage deal. She was focused on the people in front of her and the work she believed in. The breakthrough came by chance. When Maria and Father Wagner finally returned to the United States by ship, they docked in San Francisco. Richard Halliday was waiting on the pier. He caught her the moment she stepped off the boat and handed her 2 tickets to see Mary Martin in Annie Get Your Gun. Maria agreed to go. In the theater, she watched Martin command the stage with warmth and power. She understood, maybe for the first time, how her own story could live in front of an audience as a musical. It still wasn't a yes, but it softened her view. After the show, Maria delivered the bad news. She had already sold the film rights years earlier. The door seemed closed, and yet she did not shut the conversation down. She gave Halliday and Martin a small opening, a quiet test of their seriousness. "You're welcome to give it your best shot," she said. It was not a formal contract. It was not a promise. It was a reluctant permission born of respect. That one sentence set off the work that led to a new concept, new songs, and a path to Broadway. Hollywood's casting wars. Hollywood didn't make the road easy for the woman who would define the sound of music. Julie Andrews was already a stage star thanks to My Fair Lady, but when it came time to make the film, the studio passed her over. Executives said she wasn't camera ready. The role went to Audrey Hepburn, and most of the singing was dubbed. For Andrews, it felt unfair. She had built the role on Broadway and proved she could carry a show, yet she was told she didn't fit the look of a movie star. Everything flipped when Disney screened an early cut of Mary Poppins for director Robert Wise. Wise was still deciding who should play Maria. After only a few minutes of Andrews on screen, he made up his mind. She was natural, bright, and effortless, and he didn't need to think twice. That early look at Mary Poppins changed her path and the film's future. Her contract, however, was not built to share in success. Andrews accepted a flat fee of $225,000 with no royalties and no share of profits. It was a good paycheck for a rising film actor, but the movie would go on to earn hundreds of millions over time. She saw none of that additional money. In contrast, Mary Martin, who originated Maria on Broadway, had a deal tied to the stage show's profits and reportedly earned around $8 million from the run. The difference is striking. The stage star who didn't make the movie earned far more from the stage, while Andrews, whose performance became iconic worldwide, was locked into a one-time fee. Then came a moment of sweet public payback. Andrews won the Academy Award for Best Actress for Mary Poppins. On stage, she thanked Jack Warner, the man whose team had rejected her for My Fair Lady. It was polite and sharp at the same time, the kind of line that made clear she knew exactly what had happened and how fate had turned. While Andrews' casting finally clicked, the search for Captain Georg von Trapp was rough. Robert Wise tried big names, Sean Connery, Richard Burton, and Bing Crosby, but nothing fit. Some actors passed, others didn't match the tone. The part needed gravity, humor, and a change of heart that felt earned. The list kept shrinking. Christopher Plummer eventually stepped in, but not with excitement. He disliked the script's sweetness and famously nicknamed the project The Sound of Mucus. He thought the story leaned too much on sentiment. If he was going to do it, he wanted the character to feel real. He asked for changes, more bite in the lines, more private conflict, and at least one musical moment that revealed the captain as a person, not just a stern father. Those demands shaped the film. The team adjusted dialogue to allow for dry wit and guarded warmth, and Edelweiss was written to give the captain a quiet, personal voice. The song isn't an old Austrian folk tune. It was created for him. In the film, it lets audiences see his love of home and his fear of what is coming, all without speeches. It turned a stiff figure into a human being and gave Plummer a reason to believe in the role. Like Andrews, Plummer signed a flat contract, no royalties, no back-end deal. Given the film's long-term earnings, that decision would become one of the great underpayments in movie history. Still, his performance balanced Andrews perfectly and helped the story land with strength. Next, the kids, the chaos, and the on-set close calls take the production from polished songs to risky days on location. Competition, chaos, and close calls. Movie magic can look soft and easy on screen, but some days on The Sound of Music were hard and dangerous. Two moments stand out: the lake scene that almost ended in tragedy for the youngest cast member, and the cheerful hilltop opening that left Julie Andrews battered after take after take. For the playful lake scene, the Von Trapp children and Maria ride in a small boat that tips as they wave to the captain on shore. It was meant to feel light and spontaneous, but there was a serious problem the audience couldn't see. 5-year-old Kim Karath, who played Gretel, couldn't swim. The crew knew this, so they planned carefully. Julie Andrews was told to fall toward Kim when the boat flipped so she could catch her at once. When the camera rolled, the plan unraveled. As the boat tipped, Julie lost her balance and fell the opposite way, away from Kim. In the confusion, the little girl went under. She sank once, came up, and sank again. For a few seconds, everything was chaos, with splashing, shouting, and crew members racing toward the water. An older actor reached her fast and pulled her out, but the scare was real. Kim had swallowed water and began to vomit on the shore while people tried to calm her down and make sure she was safe. The physical effects passed, but the fear stayed. Kim later spoke about the trauma of that day and how it led to years of fear around water. The scene in the movie looks playful and warm, but the team never forgot what happened. Julie Andrews also remembered it as one of the scariest moments of the shoot, and she carried guilt that the planned catch had gone wrong. It was a reminder that even simple scenes can turn risky when a child is involved. and that safety plans need backup on top of backup. The film's opening shot looks peaceful. Julie Andrews as Maria, arms out, spinning on a green hill, the camera gliding in for a majestic view. To capture that sweeping move in 1964, the crew used a helicopter with a camera rig. It had to fly very low, close enough to keep Julie centered and to keep the landscape big and clean behind her. Low meant wind, a lot of it. Each time the helicopter circled back, the rotor wash blasted Julie so hard it knocked her to the ground. She would stand, smile, hit her mark, and start to spin. The helicopter would sweep in, and the blast would flatten her again. This didn't happen once or twice. It happened over and over, across multiple takes. The grass was wet, the ground uneven, and there was no way to tame the wind without losing the shot. By the end of the day, Julie had dozens of bruises on her legs and hips. She was muddy, tired, and sore. But on film, none of that shows. The final cut is bright and joyful. She looks free and calm, as if nothing in the world could touch her. Years later, she laughed about it in interviews, saying, "The helicopter kept trying to bury me in Austria." It was her way of pointing out that even the prettiest moment in the film came from a grueling process full of trial and error. These risky days were only part of the trouble. Next comes the rain, the delays, and the budget fears that nearly sank the shoot. Plummer's private misery. Christopher Plummer may have looked calm, elegant, and in control on screen, but behind the scenes of The Sound of Music, he was miserable. He felt trapped by the film's sweetness and by the cheerful world it presented. While the cast and crew saw the Austrian setting as magical, Plummer later described Salzburg as a prison of sentimentality. To him, the story leaned too heavily on charm and optimism. He preferred darker, more complex material. The happy tone of The Sound of Music went against everything he found interesting as an actor. Plummer often said he struggled to connect with the character of Captain Von Trapp. The stern father softening into a loving husband felt, to him, too predictable and polished. He wanted sharper edges, conflict, and realism. As the production went on, that frustration grew. He began to distance himself from the cast and spent much of his free time alone. When he did socialize, it was often over drinks. Heavy drinking became his way to cope with long shooting days, and a role he didn't fully respect. He would later joke about being 3 sheets to the wind during some of the more emotional scenes, but beneath the humor was real discomfort. He also tried to handle the problem with self-mockery. He made sarcastic jokes about the production and nicknamed the movie The Sound of Mucus. It was his way of detaching from the sentimental atmosphere around him. While others celebrated the film's warmth, he rolled his eyes. Crew members later said he could be charming and kind, but they also noticed that he seemed restless and unhappy. The more the movie leaned into its hopeful message, the more he wanted to pull back. One of the most surprising results of this tension came during the filming of Edelweiss. It's one of the most emotional scenes in the film, with Captain Von Trapp singing to his family and country with tears in his eyes. It looks heartfelt and genuine, but Plummer later admitted that he was drunk while filming it. He wrote in his 2008 memoir that he had been drinking heavily that day and didn't even remember parts of the shoot clearly. Yet the performance worked. The emotion that came through on screen, tender, shaky, almost painful, felt real to audiences. Viewers thought it showed the captain's deep love for Austria, when in truth, it came from a mix of exhaustion, frustration, and alcohol. Then came the final insult to his pride. When the film was in post-production, the studio decided that Plummer's singing voice wasn't strong enough for the songs. Without telling him at first, they brought in Bill Lee, a professional studio singer who had done voice work for Mary Poppins and Sleeping Beauty. Lee dubbed most of the captain's singing, including the high notes in Edelweiss. Plummer was furious when he found out. He felt it undermined his performance and made him seem less capable. For years, fans didn't know the difference. Lee's voice blended well, but Plummer never forgot. Over time, though, his feelings softened. As the film became a global classic, he began to see its value in a new light. He said later in interviews that The Sound of Music had charmed him in spite of himself. He still found it overly sweet, but he respected what it meant to audiences. It had survived and grown far beyond his expectations. The director swap that saved the film. Before The Sound of Music became the joyful, sweeping film the world knows, it almost had a very different director, one who didn't even like musicals. In the early 1960s, William Wyler, one of Hollywood's most respected filmmakers, was originally signed to direct the movie. Wyler was a serious artist, best known for powerful dramas like Ben-Hur and Roman Holiday. To take on The Sound of Music, he even resigned from 20th Century Fox's board of directors to avoid a conflict of interest. That showed how committed he seemed to the project at first, but it didn't last. From the beginning, Wyler had doubts. He didn't believe in the story's tone or its music. He felt the songs interrupted the flow of the narrative instead of enhancing it. According to people who worked with him, Wyler thought musicals lacked realism and emotional truth. When he saw The Sound of Music performed on stage in New York, he walked out unconvinced. The story's optimism and sweetness didn't match the kinds of films he was drawn to. On top of that, Wyler was quietly facing a personal challenge. His hearing was deteriorating. Directing a musical, a project built on rhythm, pitch, and timing, was becoming increasingly difficult for him. He needed a graceful way out, and he found it when another opportunity arrived. Around the same time, Wyler was offered the chance to direct The Collector, a dark psychological drama based on the novel by John Fowles. The story was everything The Sound of Music wasn't: eerie, quiet, and unsettling. It spoke to his creative instincts. Wyler asked Fox to release him from his contract for The Sound of Music, officially citing scheduling conflicts. The studio agreed, and he walked away from what would become one of the most successful movies in history. His exit left a huge gap. The production already had a script, a cast forming, and pressure from the studio to move fast. Fox needed someone who could take over quickly, but also understand both story and song. That's when Robert Wise entered the picture. Wise had just finished co-directing West Side Story, another musical that had earned him 2 Academy Awards, one for Best Picture and another for Best Director. He was known for being organized, calm, and respectful of both actors and crew. Where Wyler saw problems, Wise saw potential. When Wise stepped in, he immediately began reshaping the film. He wanted it to feel cinematic, not theatrical. He expanded the scope, turning the hills, lakes, and abbeys of Salzburg into living parts of the story. He moved several songs outside the confines of the stage setting, giving them space to breathe, like filming Do-Re-Mi across the open countryside instead of inside a house. He worked closely with Julie Andrews to make Maria's journey more natural and believable, emphasizing emotional realism over stage-style exaggeration. More importantly, Wise stayed calm through the chaos. The production faced bad weather, budget fears, endless delays, and technical mishaps, but he kept everyone grounded. When scenes failed, like the gazebo kiss ruined by noisy lighting, he found creative solutions that often made the film better. He was patient when actors grew tired or frustrated, and he balanced art with discipline. By the time shooting wrapped, his steady leadership had turned a troubled production into something seamless and unforgettable. Wyler may have chosen darkness, but Wise chose light, and that choice made history. the scene that wasn't supposed to exist. If you ask fans to name the most romantic moment in The Sound of Music, many will point to the gazebo kiss. The scene is simple and quiet. Maria and Captain Von Trapp step into the soft light, speak in low voices, and finally admit what they feel. The camera moves gently. The music is restrained. Their faces glow as they lean in. It looks calm, sure, and effortless. What the audience doesn't see is that the scene almost fell apart. It survived only because the crew abandoned their original plan and found a last-minute way to hide a problem that no one could control. The trouble came from the lighting. To fake moonlight, the crew used carbon arc lamps, the industry standard at the time for powerful, cool-colored light. These lights were strong and crisp. They were also loud. On this set, they were worse than loud. As Julie Andrews and Christopher Plummer approached each other, the arcs let out a rude, long sound, like an embarrassing raspberry, again and again. It happened right as the actors came close, the exact moment when the scene needed quiet and grace. The timing was almost cruel. The lamps would sputter and buzz at the worst possible beat. That noise ruined take after take. Andrews and Plummer tried to push through, but the sound was so silly, they burst into laughter every time. They would reset, breathe, and try to be serious. The noise would return, and so would the laughter. It spread to the crew. Camera operators shook with quiet giggles. The sound team threw up their hands. People tried to muffle the lamps. They tried repositioning. Nothing worked. The actors' timing fell apart. The mood was gone. The clock kept running, and the production was burning hours of footage and an expensive night setup with no usable scene to show for it. Director Robert Wise had to make a choice. He could shut down and try again another night, which would mean more money and no guarantee that the problem would go away. Or he could change the plan. He chose to change the plan. Wise told the team to abandon the bright frontal lighting they had built so carefully. He moved Andrews and Plummer away from the lamps and staged the scene in silhouette, letting the glow of the gazebo windows do the work. By putting their faces mostly in shadow, he hid the twitchy mouth movements that give away laughter. He also reduced the need for noisy arc lights aimed straight at them. The set kept its shape and mood, but the most troublesome gear was now out of the way. The result didn't just solve a problem. It created something better. The silhouettes softened the actors' features and focused the viewer on body language and breath. The light framed them instead of hitting them. Their steps felt slower. Their voices felt closer. The kiss became less about two faces and more about the feeling between them. What began as damage control became a style choice that lifted the moment. The scene looks like a dream, not because of a grand design, but because a practical fix forced the production to strip away everything extra. Afterward, the studio wanted the mess kept quiet. 20th Century Fox did not want headlines about obscene lamp noises spoiling a love scene. Executives discouraged the cast and crew from talking about the failed takes, the laughter, or the last-minute change. For years, fans believed the scene was shot exactly as planned. Only decades later, when Julie Andrews told the story on television, did the public hear what really happened. She laughed as she recalled how hard it is to stay serious when strange sounds are blowing up your close-up. It was funny in hindsight, but on the night they filmed it, it felt like a crisis. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss more behind-the-scenes stories from classic Hollywood.